The best-known socialist in the country happens to be a millionaire with 3 houses. What did I miss here? We're not going to throw out capitalism. We tried that. Other countries tried that. It was called communism, and it just didn't work. I don't think there's any chance of the senator beating President Trump.
There you've got former Mayor Michael Bloomberg calling out Bernie Sanders as a millionaire socialist with 3 houses with no chance of beating Donald Trump. So, with reaction, we've got Bernie Sanders campaign surrogate Amer Zahr joins us right now from Detroit. Amer, good morning to you.
Good morning. How are you?
Doing okay. How does the campaign feel about the former mayor of New York going after Bernie?
Well, that's okay. We welcome those kinds of discussions and debates. Look, Bloomberg proved last night that he's part of the problem. He's part of the oligarchy. He is not going to be able to put together any sort of coalition to defeat President Trump. Whereas we showed last night in the Bernie Sanders movement that we have the most diverse, multi-generational, multi-class, multiracial coalition that is going to bring new voters into the process while at the same time taking many voters away from Donald Trump. I think Bloomberg proved that he's not ready for the prime time last night.
That's an understatement. Amer, what is the campaign saying about how lousy Bloomberg was?
Well, it's not just us. I think it's everybody. I mean, look, I think that this is maybe the first time that Mayor Bloomberg has ever had to raise his hand, to ask permission to speak. You know, this is the kind of world that he lives in. And now we have an arena here where he has to compete with a lot of smart, practiced people in a Democratic primary, and he's simply not ready for it. I mean, the arrogance that he came to the stage with and the lack of vision that he came with. I think Bernie really showed very clearly how our campaign is focused on moral clarity, inclusiveness, and really changing the system so that the working class people of America have a more fair shot every day in our country.
Amer, what did you make of the breaking news yesterday that apparently an internal memo from the Bloomberg campaign said that 3 of the Democrats were going to have to drop out, Amy Klobuchar, Joe Biden, and Pete Buttigieg. Otherwise, Bernie's going to run away with it. And the Bloomberg people feel it's really just a 2-man race. It's their man and your man.
Well, I think that they showed last night that Bloomberg versus Bernie is going to be a runaway for us. Look, I think that this sort of arrogance that we see from the Bloomberg campaign, we're just putting ads out there and never getting in front of real people. You saw what that results in last night. But there have been all kinds of polls. You know, there was a Wall Street Journal poll a few days ago that showed Bernie in the lead among all the candidates, but also showed that if you put Bernie up against Bloomberg one-on-one in the Democratic primary, Bernie beats him by 20 points. So this notion that there's all these sort of like nicely aligned ideological sort of voters and that all of Biden's voters would go to Bernie or go to Bloomberg, that's not true. We know from many polls that the number 1 second choice for Biden voters is Bernie Sanders. The number 1 second choice for Warren voters is Bernie Sanders. So this notion that if all the quote-unquote moderates or centrists just got out of the way, that Bernie's coalition wouldn't grow, that's just not true. Bernie shows that he's the most inclusive candidate over and over and over again.
And we have heard that a number of times. Amer, yesterday on the program, we had Peter Schweizer, the investigative journalist, who's written a new book. Yeah. And in the book, he talks a little bit about how a lot of Bernie Sanders supporters may not realize that Bernie Sanders' wife, Jane, he says, has profited from media buys during the campaign. Here's a little snippet, and then I'd like your reaction.
When Bernie was mayor of Burlington, Vermont, one of the first things he did, Steve, was put his then-girlfriend, later wife, on the payroll. The city council objected and said, you can't do this. Bernie ignored them. And that began this pattern of sort of steering money, taxpayer money and campaign money, to his family. It's a major problem for Bernie, this gap between the image he portrays and the reality of how he actually conducts his own affairs.
Amer, one of the other things he did say was that nothing was illegal about that, but that there are a number of Bernie Sanders supporters who may not realize that that was going on behind the scene.
Well, I watched that piece yesterday, and first of all, I think it's talking about things that happened in the 80s, not things that's happening now. We're talking about an upstart campaign back in the 80s. that it was probably a family-run campaign. I didn't read his book. I don't plan on reading his book. He specializes in right-wing hit pieces, Clinton Cash, and all kinds of other things that have been noted by reputable news sources that his writing is riddled with errors and inaccuracies. So I don't really want to get into too much debate.
Yep.
I'm excited about what happened last night. I'm excited about our campaign moving forward. We're going to win this nomination, and we're going to have the campaign that is going to take on Donald Trump and defeat him in November.
All right. By the way, Peter Schweizer does take a look at people on the political right as well, on the left as well. Amer, we wanted to give you a chance to respond. We appreciate you dropping by and joining us today from Detroit. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much.